All right, good evening. Welcome to the Neary Building Committee meeting. It is Thursday, February 13th, 2025. It is 7:31 p.m. and we have 6 of our 7 members present for the evening. First order of business is approval of the meeting minutes from Monday night. I know they were circulated this afternoon. Not sure if folks are ready to vote on those yet or not, but open it for discussion. Is that a yes or a no?
I'm okay. I read them.
I read them. I'm ready to vote.
Okay. I will move that we approve the minutes as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Andrew?
Aye.
Denise?
Aye.
Roger?
Aye.
Kathy?
Abstain.
Mark?
Aye.
And I am I as well. So 501 on that. All right, we are going to go right into the heart of the discussion. So let me get the rest of the team over here. Kathy, you also have a select board quorum. Are you posted?
Nope. They can listen.
All right. You don't anymore, so. All right. I think we do this in 2 fronts. Katie, where are we at on the schematic design, like the actual report, absent the financial piece?
So it was essentially 3 parts. The narrative, which we had sent and we've already received comments. I've rolled all of those in, and then there were the drawings, which were sent out. I haven't heard yet if there were any comments on that. And then the third part is the budget. So if there are any comments that you received on the plans that you'd like to send along, we can incorporate those.
Who were the drawings sent to?
I believe Jim sent an email notifying that they were in the box location.
Okay, this is Monday.
Yes.
Okay, it did not get to the committee, so.
And that's fine. We have a little bit of time to incorporate that if you wanted to send them out and if people had a few days to review them. I don't picture that there are going to be a lot of comments as far as, the educational plan. This is what the spaces represent that. So it's really just to lay eyes on the design that we're putting forth. And it's in agreement with the space summary and everything that we've shown as far as images and plans and that. So it's really just an opportunity to ask questions.
Okay, so I will make sure that those get distributed out. The next item is the revised report. Have we received that?
Are you talking about the narrative portion that we had sent previously?
Yes.
I have not sent it along. I've incorporated the comments. I had a few follow-up comments that I realized in reading them that they were likely Stephanie's comments, and we touched base yesterday. So I've incorporated most of those. I could send them tomorrow with the changes. I was going to summarize in an email with responses to each question. Frankly, a lot of them are, thank you, we've edited it. But I can complete that all into a package and send it tomorrow.
Okay. Sounds good.
Right.
All right, so it sounds like both those go hand in hand. So once we get that, we'll send the package to the committee and we'll discuss how we are going to vote on that and when at the end of the meeting once we get through the finance piece.
Okay.
Okay, who needs screen share privileges on presenting the finance element of this?
So I have all that up, Jason, so I can
Okay.
present.
Do you have co-host privileges? Kathy, is there any primer you need to give on this?
Yeah, a little bit of a primer. So
I'm gonna get on my soapbox for a moment. We had asked the team to give us one or more choices that would get us to about a $69.5 million town debt. We may not agree with them, but we wanted to see ways we could do it, and we asked for that by the end of day Wednesday. We did get a spreadsheet that had some numbers on it. That's what I worked with all morning. And then I just happened to call Jim to clarify something because there was clearly a mistake in one thing. And just by coincidence, he said, well, we've redone this and I've sent the whole package to Jason. And this was, I don't know, 3:30, 4 o'clock. So I said, can you please send it to me quickly so I can work with this? And the answer was no. I've got to check with Jason, make sure it's okay. So I finally got it, but I had no time to work with it. To begin with, I'm at work. I've got to get things done. I know of one mistake that's in it, so we'll do the best we can tonight, but it was really unfortunate that the information that was put together didn't come to me as chair of the subcommittee for finance. I just feel totally ignored at this point. I only know why we have this committee. So anyway, that's all I'm gonna say we'll talk about it later, but we didn't get enough time to really work with it, so everything's gonna be on the fly tonight, real quick. So if I'd had it at 1 o'clock, I could have spent more time with it to make sure that we had good numbers, but I've had to do things real quick to try to update the town piece of it. And so I'll do the best I can tonight, but I needed more time.
So Kathy, are you accusing me of not forwarding it?
But you did after I asked for it, but I don't know why I didn't get it at 1 o'clock. Why would Jim say I can't do it because Jason hasn't said I can?
Because I have a full-time job too. I don't know. This is tacky. I guess I will make it very clear that any financial documents, Jim, once they're ready, should go to the chair of the finance subcommittee at the same time they come to the chair of the Neary Building Committee. And we will resolve this once and for all.
Right, thank you. Right, so I don't know, I think Jim should go first and talk about the ways that we could reduce the debt. Get through that, because I guess we need to go through those one at a time and decide which ones are palatable, which ones aren't. Then Brian's here, so then Brian and I can chime in, Andrew Pfaff can chime in, has got the impact on the town for the next 5 years. It's estimated, includes, of course, a hotel budget, and a lot could change there, but we've at least got a starting point to start understanding what we will take to the May 10th meeting as far as telling the town what we think the impact of the project will be on their taxes over the next 5 years. So I'd say do that one last. And we know what every $1 million is going to do for us as far as reducing the 77 million down. So we can do that tonight as we talk and agree on any, if any, we want to approve as far as trying to get that 77 million down to a smaller number.
Can we have that number first, just because I think it'll help frame as people make decisions as we go through there. So what does every million cost?
Well, I know Brian did this. Well, Brian, you want to talk about what it is? I know it, but I feel like I'm still in his thunder. He's the one that did the computation, so I think he should tell us what it is.
And you're on mute, Brian.
I think he's here, right?
He is. I can see him, and he's
Okay.
moving,
All right. Sorry, Brian, too.
but he's on mute.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and do it, Brian. Okay, so for every $1 million for an average house, and remember, an average house right now is about $1 million roughly. You would save $14.20 for every $1 million that you take off that current $78 million debt.
That's correct.
Thank you, Brian. Sorry, but I didn't know if you're going to get there or not.
A little over 14, but yes, that's right. That's round numbers.
$14.20. So if you take off $7 million, then you would reduce the taxes for that year by $100.
Okay. Thank you. So Jim, are you going to share something now?
Yep. All right. So this was the list that was distributed. these are, and we've broken it down into different building elements, scope groups. And we have the estimated total cost here, total cost reduction. And this is an all-in cost. So this is the trade cost plus any of the contractors markup. So when this gets plugged into the construction budget, all those numbers come out at once. So I think we're going to run through all of them just so everybody understands what they are, and then we can hop back up to the list and have a discussion on what's palatable. We're going to have Arrow Street chime in on scope and if there's anything that they want to add. So first is building exterior items. We have what was discussed at the last meeting, decrease in the acoustical roof screens. We chose 50%. So that's in the amount of 360,000. Next is to change brick to CMU at the gym. So this would be not a, rough sawn CMU. This would be a decorative CMU. And that was in the amount of 66,528. So the next item is to delete the curtain wall and storefront at the front entrance and change to masonry. Obviously, curtain wall storefront has a bit of a premium over masonry. So that's a savings of 24,600. And then the uniform color pattern for the brick masonry. So we did put I believe it was a 5% premium on the masonry for the brick patterning that Arrow Street has shown in past meetings. So that was a potential savings of 85,728. And then the exterior wall E1A, so ACM panels, provide deduction to go to aluminum corrugated panels. So Katie, I don't know if you just want to put a little bit more color on this one.
Yeah, so the media and art bar that is sort of above the entrance as you're walking towards the building, we had been showing what is a composite metal. And we found that if we changed that to a corrugated metal, so basically the skin behind it is the same as far as the waterproofing, but the skin on the front that you would see, the metal itself, we found a cheaper material that we could use.
Okay, thank you. And I guess while we're in each section, so Katie, from the design team's perspective, any of these seem easy that you would be okay with basically recommending at this point?
So the acoustic roof screens, we did some quick takeoffs, and with the shape of the building the way it currently is, we think that we can achieve this 50% reduction. So that's something we can push on as we go through design. The change the brick to CMU is something that is commonly done, especially because the gym is a larger volume. You tend to use a larger unit of masonry. The scale looks, consistent. So that is something that we've not often done, and seems like it would be an easy thing to achieve. The curtain wall at the entry, Larry, did you want to chime in on this one particularly? I know you had some.
I would say I typically would like to keep the entry open to views and things, so it doesn't feel quite as closed in and unwelcoming. On the other hand, if we wanted to say, well, we're going to save 25,000, we could probably find that in other places if we wanted to just identify that and keep moving with it.
And when we get to more of a discussion, I have some images I can show that we can illustrate what we're describing here. The uniform brick pattern, I think, is something we had been working with this sort of blend of different color bricks together. We spoke to a mason who talked to several different masons and said they think that there wouldn't necessarily be an upcharge, but we wanted to be on the safe side as far as how intricate we were getting. So I think if we decided that we wanted a more uniform look, we could find a blend that would meet the design intent, but still taking some savings. And then I've already described the metal is basically changing from one type of a metal cladding to a different type.
Okay. Thank you. So the building interior. So first is delete the bleachers at the gym, and the key point here, and move that to fitting within the FF&E budget. So that would be, we would still do everything in the gym, but just moving that to fit within that budget, which is feasible. So that was a savings of 70,200. Reducing the gym size. So that's a savings of 163,200. So that was, Katie, about 600 square feet.
680 square feet, I believe it was. So rough, let's just say 700 for just rough concept.
So this would limit the size of the bleachers that we could have. We could have a limited number of rows of seats in the gym. So again, that's about a savings of 163,200. Next is to reduce number of movable.
Jim,
Go
I'm
ahead.
going to stop you on that one. So when I remember when we added the bleachers, we didn't have to change the size of the gym.
That's right.
Correct.
So
It currently meets the MSBA square footage. This is simply, this would be making it smaller than the size you're allowed. It was just as a way to, could you save any money by reducing square footage?
so dropping it down from the 6,000 basically.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So next is reduce number of movable partitions in the classroom wings. So that's a savings of 48,600.
And to,
Um,
if I could add to that one,
Yep.
Jim, this is the 4 movable partitions. So each wing has 1 pair of classrooms that have a movable partition, separating the 2 of them, similar to the current school. There is one that is not being VE'd, which is behind the stage, because that's necessary to get the amount of students that you would need on the stage. So this is only for the 4 in the classroom wing.
Okay, thank you. Then removing the adjoining doors between classrooms, savings of 48,000. Oh, sorry. 27,072. Remove the borrowed light from classrooms. So that's the glass going into the corridor, savings at 29,376. And then removing the tile behind sinks in the classrooms for a savings 49,613. From just before I turn over to Katie, I would say moving the bleachers into the FF&E, I think that's fairly simple. I think we can find room in that budget if we do want to decrease the overall construction budget, which would then, I think there's room in that budget for that. So Katie, do you want to just comment on any of the other items?
No, I agree with you about that. Let's see. I think the tile behind the sinks is a very easy thing to do. It's very straightforward. I think we should hear from the educators as far as any of the ones that they might care about for educational reasons, as far as things like the partitions or the doors or the barred lights.
You want to hear from us now?
Let's go through all of these and just let's just get the holistic view
Sounds
of
good.
where we think we're at. And then I think we'll go back through to try to figure out where everyone's at, would be my suggestion.
Sounds good.
Before Kathy, do you have a comment on?
It's to Stephanie. So Stephanie, there may be to do those anyway. So if there's no appetite, we don't need to hear from you, assuming you want to keep them in there. So why don't we find out if there's an appetite for those? And then if there is, then speak to them. But I think some of these, there's probably not going to be much of an appetite to change anyway.
But I think we should go one by one at the end. I just want to get an overall big picture because we just got a spreadsheet that was sent to us, right? That doesn't have all the details. So I just think because it may inform, I agree, right? If educators are saying you have to keep this, that may answer some of the questions. But I think we need to just see the bigger picture given the range of dollars that were referenced earlier. So just quickly go through
Yep.
HVAC and site, and then we'll go back up to the top and we'll ask at each point on the educational piece of it and then get committee feedback.
Okay. All right, yeah, the next 2 sections are fairly straightforward. So the HVAC, so this is taking only one. So both of these would delete the geothermal wells. So first is and this was the presentation that was made by Arrow Street as far as the incentives. So our three different options. So to go back to VRF, no geothermal, that's a savings of 4,081,417. To go to air source heat pumps instead of ground source heat pumps, no geothermal, that's a savings of 2,669,712. Again, those are straightforward. That's essentially deleting the geothermal and replacing with another system. So the site, these items, the first three items are the soils allowance that we discussed at length in our last meeting. The first item is to move that soils allowance out of the construction budget and move it into our construction contingency. We're currently carrying a 2.5% construction contingency. So what we would do is take 750 and just add it on top of that 2.5%. So that would take 1.5 million out of the construction budget, but then add 750 to the construction contingency. Next would be to decrease the state soils allowance to 500K, which would be a savings of 900,000. And this includes, just so if folks are doing math, this includes all the below the line trade cost markups that the construction manager has. So that's for GMP contingency, all those percentages. So that's a straight 20%. Next would be to decrease that allowance down to 250K, which would be a savings of 1.2 million. Next is to reduce concrete sidewalks with bituminous or asphalt sidewalks. So that's a savings of 90,000. And then change the bituminous drive. So this is the emergency drive that Arrow Street has been showing behind the building, changing that from asphalt to crushed stone. Next is, and sorry, that's a savings of 108,000. Next is between the two classroom wings, that courtyard, deleting right now, Arrow Street's showing planting, some outdoor seating. So deleting all of that and just basically, it would just be grass. So that's a savings 306,000. And so that's the end of the list. So are there any specific item or question, or I guess, sorry, Katie, did you have any comments on any of these
No,
items?
I think you described them well.
Okay.
Kathy, you want to go before we go back up to the top?
Yeah, I just think, Jason, we got to clarify one thing, which is that HVAC section. This is what was perplexing to me, but I understand now where you're going to see it. So the thing you don't see there yet is the rebates, credits, checks we expect to get from the state and the federal government if the Inflation Reduction Act savings are still in effect when we put the system in service. So you're going to see that in a minute. That's over $5 million. So that's not here. I think I would have put it here, but that's not here. But you will see it on the next spreadsheet when Jim shows different permutations about how we may be able to do this to get this debt down using some of these, all these, et cetera. So it's coming.
So it sounds like we should hold the HVAC discussion till we get to the next sheet, but maybe we can go through some of the other ones here now. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to read each one. I'm going to let Stephanie or someone from the district go first in terms of yay or nay from an educational or indifferent, and then let the committee weigh in, and then I assume between Jim, Kathy, or some combination, we're going to kind of tally this up and see where we're at once we're done with it. Does that makes that okay with everyone?
So yeah, so Jason, just for the tallying piece on my other screen here, I have the spreadsheet that tallies up the accepted as we walk through these, if folks agree with them.
Okay. So acoustical roof screens. Stephanie, anything from an education perspective?
I don't think we have anything on the building exterior items. Keith, am I correct on that?
Yeah, I would agree. We did review those and we don't have any issue with those building exterior items. I think we're good.
Okay, so go to the committee then. Mark?
Yeah, I'm okay with this, but I just have a couple comments just to get into our notes on it. And two things down, I am gonna want to just take a look at the front of the building before I decide there. So we should be prepared to bring those plans up. But on the acoustical roof screens, we have really only two areas, and I think you picked up on it, that we're concerned with, and that's the western reach of the two wing buildings. That's the closest we come to any real residential spot. So I suspect that's where the panels probably will be focused. But the other thing I note is we've got a perfect opportunity, if the equipment can be done there efficiently, to utilize that secondary roof structure, which is between the wings and the front building, which only have an exposure north and one south. If we can use that window, the building itself really will shield quite a bit of noise. So that's my only comment.
Is there anyone on the committee that objects to this proposal on the acoustical roof screens? Okay. Change brick to CMU on the gym. Any objections here? Kathy, then Denise.
So Stephanie and Keith don't have any objection to this before we decide yes or no on this one?
No
Correct,
objection.
Kathy, all the building exterior items, we do not have any objections to.
All right, this one's pretty small. I don't know what it means. I don't know what it would look like. I thought that the render we saw on Monday was pretty neat. So I'm kind of ambivalent on this one, and whatever the majority wants, I'll go with. So I am not strongly in favor or opposed to this one as like I was the first one, which I was strongly in favor of. So this one, it's not gonna make much of a difference. I just don't know what it really does to the look of the gym.
Does the design team want to weigh in on that?
So it's a little bit how I was describing that because of the scale of that space, you would be using larger bricks. We may not be able to achieve the gradient that we were showing in some of those images, or it may be more pixelated, if you will, because the masonry units are slightly larger. But it could be, we would select colors of units that would be consistent with the rest of the building. So it's really effectively a change of scale. Larry, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I was gonna say, I think I can share my screen, maybe? Oh, nope, I gotta send a request.
Now you can.
Okay. We did the same switch, a little more holistically at the Acton Boxborough School. And this is that material. So this, in lieu of being clay masonry, is actually cement masonry. And in difference to the sense you have, maybe if you've seen the back of the shopping center and think that's the CMU we're thinking about, no, it's different than that. We think there are some savings there. You know, some of this is sort of the push and pull that you go through in the design process. But, you know, we're trying to say, okay, where are some places we can identify some cost reductions? And this may be one place that we look at it.
Okay. Denise?
This is kind of a general comment of all of those that, will affect the aesthetics of the building. I would like to see it, how it's going to look and how it would change, because as Kathy pointed out, the diagram that we saw the other night looks pretty good, and I don't want to see, if we're going to make changes, I kind of would like to see what they're going to look like. And I know this isn't a big issue because it's not that much money, but I think, it's gonna be there forever, so I'd like to see the differences.
My suggestion on the exterior, and I'll go to Keith and Andrew, is given the numbers we're looking at here for the couple of remaining ones, I would think we would carry these in the budget for now, and we can work between now and an ultimate bid package. I realize it would be in the number that would go to the MSBA. I realize it would be in the number that would go to town meeting floor. But using again where Kathy started off of the amount per 1 million, I think we have some much bigger topics that we need to look at than these particular items, although I appreciate that there was no materiality threshold to these, unless, of course, the design team thinks that they can make some compelling drawings before we have to make a decision.
Sorry, I was going to suggest is to, rather than tie us into specific items that we're changing, is to say, okay, on the exterior facade of the building, let's save and add up that dollars and say, okay, we're going to save that dollars. We did think, interestingly enough, that the choice of materials at the media center was in the direction we wanted to head with the design, but also resulted in some $300,000 of savings, which we thought was a good move in that direction as well.
Okay, so Jim, why don't you pull back up the sheet? I'm going to go
Sure.
to Keith, then Andrew, then Roger.
And I did this just as an example. This is on another project. This is the decorative CMU. And then above is the brick. So just for reference. Okay. So we were on the uniform color pattern, or sorry, no, the curtain wall at the entrance.
Do you want me to share an image of the front entry so that people can understand what we're talking about here?
I guess Andrew, Keith, and Roger, do you want to do that, or do you want to go to your comments? So I just don't know what you're going to say.
Well,
So
I was gonna say, Jason, I kind of agree with you. I mean, I think some of the other one, I think the acoustical roof screens, that one makes sense. I think the other ones, again, I think we can do an analysis to say, what it would look like. Will it look bad? And then also, whether or not from a school perspective, Keith and Greg and everybody, whether or not there's something like on the alternates that you would like. Would you swap out the panels on the exterior for the sliding storefront doors? Right. From a value perspective, in terms of what you're looking for, would you rather I think some of that could be done later, to your point, Jason. So maybe we just kind of hit on the things that we know we want to look at now, and we can play with that in the final bid.
so you saying that in reference to items 2, 3, and 4 in here?
To the change, everything below the acoustical screens, kind of just like holding them to the side to say, the analysis. I think we could do something that says, like, after the fact, right? Put the money in and then say, hey, when we finally look at it, when we finally go out to bid, would we rather swap the exterior wall EWA 5 for, a sliding storefront door, right? Or do that kind of analysis, right? But I think including that in the cost for now is okay. I think the goal here is to find enough out of this to get the price down just below 70. And I think there's things in here we can do to add to the number. So maybe, like, I just did a back of the envelope one. There's 3 or 4 things in here I'd pull out and basically get there and then leave the rest.
Andrew, I agree with you on 2, 3, and 4, but the 5th one, it sounded like Katie thought that was pretty easily doable. So I'd leave that 5th one as a,
But I'm just saying, Kathy, if we take that one, we might be cutting too close to. We can leave it as a possible. I'm just saying we might be cutting a little too much to get below our target.
How can you cut too much?
That's what I'm saying. We might cut that and then add 200,000 back.
All right. I saw Keith, your hand went down. So
Yeah, Jason, no, I'm in agreement with what's been said so far, so I think we can proceed.
okay. So exterior wall, do we want to discuss that or not? Okay, Kathy, I see your head nodding. So you want to see an example of that and then make a decision?
And make sure I heard Katie right, which is she thought that this one was reasonably doable without changing much or affecting the quality of anything. So obviously I have no idea what EWA5 means.
Yeah, this is the direction, as sort of Larry was summarizing, the direction that our design was headed anyway. What we were showing, thank you, Larry. I have it on my screen too. What we're showing there in the center of the image at the top is a rendering of the concept that we're going for, and this is actually with the new material in mind. The composite metal is similar. But this is the pattern that we're going towards. So really, this material is the direction that we were wanting to head anyway. So personally, I don't see any reason not to take that savings.
So
I like it, then let's do it.
this material, which again seems like a nice material, and we were sort of looking for that look anyway. And the other material, this material is a little more expensive that we had carried. Actually, I think it was even more than that, was one of the Prodimas.
Okay, so does anyone object to carrying item 1 and item 5 on this list? Okay. All right, interior. Let me just make sure I understood the bleachers correctly. This is kind of, we're still getting bleachers. It's just a left pocket, right pocket sort of thing in terms of what area of the budget we're carrying. So what I inferred by the discussion is you may have had an inflated FF&E budget to begin with.
So
True or false?
So I wouldn't say inflated, but I think with this dollar value, we can make it work and still get the school what they need for their other FF&E needs. So I think 70,000 within that FF&E budget is doable.
Jim, what is the cost of bleachers? 70? Or is that the impact with the soft costs added on to the construction cost?
So that's with the markup. So let me on my spreadsheet, I have that on that column.
But you know what I mean? Like if we had 50,000, it was 70 with the markup, FF&E would be less markup down below, right?
Yeah, and that's a good point, is that on the FF&E side, you're not getting the contractor's markup. Each vendor will have a small amount of markup, but it's not going to be 20%.
So do it.
Yes, yeah. We are not losing anything from the building, right?
Correct. It's a budget move. Yep.
And we will still have the right amount of desks and chairs that we need for each student to have the spot in the classroom, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any objections to this from the committee? I'm not even going to go to Stephanie and Keith on this one then. All right. Schools, reduce gym size. Thoughts?
No, leave it as is.
All right. Reduce number of movable partitions in the classroom wings.
So this is one that we would advocate to keep the partitions in the classroom wings. We do it, when we've thought a lot about the flexibility of the building to last for many years, and we do have some partnerships across classrooms where they open the doors and teach across 2 classroom spaces. It also gives us greater flexibility for professional learning sessions or for project-based learning and flexible grouping in cross classrooms. So we feel like it really gives flexibility for some of the learning needs.
And you also have double classrooms as well, correct?
Yeah, currently, and it changes from year to year, but we do have, that's what I meant by we have some partnerships where it's double classrooms where they keep the door open and 2 teachers working across the 2 rooms. And there are others where they might open it and close it, but not keep it open all the time.
Does anyone want to keep this on the list after hearing Stephanie's rationale?
Just to make sure, keep it on the list means to delete it.
Yes.
Then-
Yeah, like basically this would, we would keep the original plan that was proposed by the schools,
Okay.
is what I'm
Right.
saying.
Yeah, I think everything else on this list we should keep and delete off this list.
Anyone object to that? I certainly do not.
Fine, keeping those four,
Okay,
leave them alone.
okay. All right, we'll save you some work, Stephanie, then.
Can I say one thing about one of them, just to keep in the back of heads, is the borrowed light, which is basically those windows from the classroom into the learning commons. We would advocate for considering that hypothetical swap you talked about, Andrew, which is those sliding storefront doors for some of those borrowed light windows. We think that would make the learning commons even more useful and integrated into the learning experiences. So I know that's not necessarily something to be decided now, but I just wanted to kind of bookmark it for, as we're thinking about those things down the line.
Mark, before we go on from interior?
Yeah, could, on the last one, removing the tile, if there's a less expensive way to do it, I'm assuming you're saying we're just gonna have gypsum back there. If there's a less expensive way to do it, I'm suggesting we should keep something in the budget for it.
Like a stainless steel wall or I don't know, whatever.
Or even Wilson art, the old Formica, something back there that you can easily wipe and keep clean, because that will get destroyed in 30 days.
Yeah, but we're not taking it out. We're leaving that in as tile. We haven't taken it out. We're leaving that in.
Well, I'm suggesting you could take money out if there's a cheaper alternative.
Sure.
I don't want tile.
So just a point of clarification, just so folks know as we're walking through this. In the next phase at the DD estimate, 60% estimate and 90% estimate, there will be a VE exercise at each of those stages as well. So there will be opportunities down the line. Obviously, we're trying to get to a number that goes in front of the voters, but there will be opportunities for some of these other tweaks as we go along in the process. So just so folks know.
And to address Mark's question, yes, we can look at some less expensive ones that accomplish the same thing, or less expensive materials. There's actually FRP, which you guys may think of as the like a shower stall kind of approach. Jim, if you remember, we did that in the Acton project in the bathrooms.
Okay. Denise, do you have anything on interior?
No, if I understand this correctly, all those are staying in, correct?
Except,
With the exception of the last one that may be something else.
yeah, the bleachers are staying in. They're just being moved to another cost center.
Yeah, I'm just talking about all of them that are staying in. The petitions and the adjoining doors, they're all staying in, correct?
Yes, but I think that all the features are staying in.
Mm-hmm.
There is one number, the 70,000, that's going to appear on a different line
Right.
when we get
Yep,
up to
I
all the
understand that.
summaries, which
Mhm.
will drop 70,000 to the bottom line
Mhm.
after all the calculations or so.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
All right, we're going to skip HVAC because we need to tie this into the credits. So let's go to the soil. So 1, 2, and 3 are all interrelated in terms of a soil allowance. I assume the schools do not have a strong view of this, but let me make sure of that.
Jason, the only one I would add a comment to is the reduction from concrete sidewalks to the asphalt.
All right, let's deal with soil. We're gonna go soil
Okay,
first,
so
then we'll
I
come to
thought you said the
sidewalks.
top three. So yeah,
Yeah.
all comments for the bottom.
Okay. All right. Is there a proposal from the committee? I'll start, Kathy, with you, given you've probably studied that piece the most.
I think Andrew Pfaff has studied, Andrew, can we get to where we want to with any one of these?
I mean, I think the 250, is kind of splitting. I think that's a good piece there. Just just because it's or move it down to owner's contingency, right? But keeping it in construction cost and paying the additional overhead on top is tough. So I advocate for the 250.
I'm in the 250 camp too. I want something there, but want it significantly reduced.
Okay, so Jim, Katie, Larry, if we went with that proposal, what do you view our risks are as a town, if any?
So with soils, there's always an unknown. I would say the lower risk, obviously, is the 500K. You're still covering yourself there. So what you're doing here is splitting your risk. That if we do exceed that 250, then the construction contingency would pick up the balance. We don't know, there's more soils data to be collected in the follow-on phase. So the 250 definitely covers some risk. And so from our perspective, as long as we're covering our risk to the 250, I think I would defer to Arrow Street for any further analysis on the risk.
And my calculation, Jim, right now has us about 69.6.
And you've got that at 250, Andrew?
That's with the 1.2 deduction total. And that's
So-
without if we can move any of the STEM into eligible. That's if we could do that, that's another 400, but I excluded that. But just but that includes changing the grossing factor.
Okay, I can't comment on that. Once we get to a final dollar value, I have to run this through the 3011. As far as the bottom line.
I'm just saying, like, if we did that, right, if we did all the things I was talking about, we could add more contingency back to get to the 699999999.
69,500,000. Okay, so let's get the other three done first.
Okay.
Then move on to this actual spreadsheet that shows all the different choices.
Okay. So sidewalk, Keith, go with your comment or concern.
Yes, just to advocate to keep the concrete, just knowing the different types of surfaces that we have throughout the district. We have much better luck with our concrete sidewalks than we do with our asphalt for just their longevity, integrity, and ability to maintain. And then that would go the same for the next one, changing it from asphalt to a crushed stone. Just see a lot of short-term maintenance costs and ongoing maintenance costs related to crushed stone versus the asphalt. So I would recommend that both of those remain in if possible.
Works fine for me.
Okay. They stay in unless I hear anything else. Seeing none. All right. Plantings and outdoor seating at the center courtyard.
And that's an interesting one, Jason. I think we've had this conversation before, kind of across the district. All of our courtyards can struggle from time to time, and making sure we keep them up. So having them be low maintenance spaces is a conversation I know Katie and I have had, and certainly the ability to do that with ease. I remember seeing some of the different schools and knowing that there was a lot of planting, a lot of seasonal work that was needed to be done. So if that needed to be removed, I think what I would certainly advocate for is making sure that we could do grass throughout that entire space, to make sure that it was mowable and maintainable from that perspective. And if it were grass in that interior courtyard, it's still functional for school needs, whether there's groups that go outside, and maybe it is a potential for future outdoor seating opportunities if they would remain. So I would certainly advocate for the ones we already discussed, those two, and then if we were to make that adjustment on the deleting of plantings and the seating, that we do go with grass.
Mark?
Hate to see this one go, but I just heard what Keith said, and Keith, all I can think of is that dead courtyard at Neary, how awful it looks at time on the inside. And then if you remember the outdoor classroom at Woodward that the SEF worked so hard to fund and get planted, I think it's kind of not been taken care of very well either. So I think we should keep in mind the maintenance piece of this and do something that's practical, but you do want people to sit outside. So I'm kind of torn on this one.
Go ahead, Mark.
Actually, less, the above two, the concrete sidewalk and the bituminous drive, I'd like to see go. But this one, I want to see this one in for a totally different reason. We have a hot wall. That south wall of the north wing, it faces south and west. That's where the sun is going to be beating into this building every day it's out. And if we don't have trees in that courtyard area, we're causing ourselves an air conditioning issue. We have it in the existing school. We have it in some of the other schools where we have eliminated trees, and it affects the maintenance. It affects the cost of cooling that building. So my attitude's slightly different. I would rather see this maintained, utilized as an outdoor area with trees, not actually as they're planted now. We need them to go right down the middle to the back. So as they grow in, they're going to be providing shade to that side of the building where we absolutely need it. And if you go to the south wing, the one on the left, we do have trees that ring that building that are along the pavement. So those are the two hot spots in the building. Those are the two where the air conditioning is always going to be an issue, and we just need to be concerned. I'd rather see trees in there, and I'd rather see that a very useful area that we could use.
Larry?
In these situations, I usually say, well, what if we take half of it? Because I'm hearing both sides, and I would agree with both sides. Is simplified and operationally efficient is where we need to be in terms of the annual maintenance. And then Mark's point, I think, is well taken, and we want to keep that to be a nice space. So it does have a use. So to me, saying, okay, can we simplify it, pull 150 out of that line item and leave 150, and we've accomplished both things.
Andrew?
What exactly I'm trying to look at the PM&C and trying to figure out what this actually is in here. Or is it just a little pieces here and there? Is it?
I thought it was just a courtyard. That's why I raised my hand. Are we talking about everything planning or just the courtyard with the 360?
I mean, the whole landscape is 900,000. I just trying to figure out in here if there's something specific that I can point to.
It's in a couple of different places. It'll be some in paving. It'll be some in the sort of mounds in the middle. We have suggested these are artificial grass mounds. The kids love them. We could show you a picture of them from the Acton project. Actually, you may have seen it a minute ago when I shared that picture. So it's in several different places. There's some outdoor seating in here that they've counted. I think we probably have more shown than we should. And so to me, that's that sort of, let's find that happy middle ground so it doesn't feel like a sparse courtyard outdoor space, because I think this could be the heart of the school, but not overloading Keith and his crew with too many things to keep an eye on during the school year.
Like the granite seat wall kind of thing.
Yeah. Sometimes the seat walls we put in because we have a grade change to deal with, but that's a different subject.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and you can always add more seating out there after the fact, right? I mean, can't move an exterior wall, but landscaping and that kind of thing.
And you can say, oh, we'll add trees. Oftentimes that doesn't happen, but there is tree planting opportunities at any given season.
We had 66. Do you know how many of this would get us? Like how many trees we take off of that?
I couldn't tell you at the based on that.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think either we accept it or maybe even cut it down a little bit. But it sounds like without too much, we can scale back a little bit.
But we still need to clarify, if you look at Jim's description, he says courtyard, that's all he says. He doesn't say the surroundings. So are we talking about just reducing the courtyard, is it, or not?
That's the way that we described it to PMNC, so
So it's between the classroom wings.
it's limited to this. And I don't even think it includes the trees along the drive here. It's this area that I've put in a cloud.
So it doesn't include what Mark is concerned about on the south side.
Not the tree necessarily. We're talking more about these, yeah, the seat walls and the furniture and some of the paving and all of that and landscaping.
So Keith just needs to come in 30 and pull the weeds, right? And then it'll look great. So I'm okay taking a little bit out, but I really want to see seating there, and some landscaping. I don't want it to be all grass.
What's the number, Jim?
It is 306. So do we want to
Better
just
than that.
reduce it down to 153?
That was my suggestion.
I
Sounds
think that's pretty reasonable.
On that from the rest of the committee. All right, Keith, did you have something you wanted to add?
Just to agree with Larry's idea of cutting that in half, it does provide enough options where we could do something, to help mitigate the solar impact and do provide some options for seating outside. So as soon as he said it, I thought that was a great idea.
All right. Does that exhaust that list, Jim?
Yes. So just to be clear, for the soils, was there consensus
Well,
bringing
I
that
think
down?
people want to kind of see where they
Gotcha.
want to see the impact on the other. There's clearly a proposal on the table to go to the 250, but I
Well,
think there was also some commentary around just seeing where we land.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
soil isn't really a thing. It's just additional contingency, right? So I think it's wherever we land, we can goose up or lower the contingency.
Jason, you're not here. What do you want?
Certainly not the numbers in there now. Let me be very clear. I just want to make sure I cannot and will not go back to town meeting again if we need more contingency. So, philosophically, I just need to make sure we're not taking too much from the contingency right off the bat, before we even start. I looked to one of the reasons why public safety was a success. It was because we kept the right amount of contingency in there and gave ourselves options as we went and managed the you-know-what out of the budget. And we got it to where we needed and everyone wanted to be, but we had cushion we were working with for the unknown. So I just want to make sure we don't cut it too much. I'm not offended by any means with the 250 suggestion. I just want to make sure we have stuff to work with for whether it's soil or 200 other things that could come up during the project, that we haven't dug ourselves in a hole to artificially meet a number. Because quite candidly, I don't think $14 to the average house, again, which if we only talking $1 million, is going to make or break this project. I realize $14 times a multiplier certainly starts to drive different decisions and different behaviors. So kind of working within $1 million threshold here, Kathy, and I get the optics of a 69 versus a 70. That's where I'm at. But again, I'm at 250 now, as long as I can get assurances that we are not overcutting the contingency just to hit a target.
And this is where I'm confused. So Jim, help me. So the everything's done, documents done, we've got a bid, we've accepted the bid. The contractor that has a bid, he knows what he's got to do to build this school. Why isn't the risk then on him to remove that soil? Is he going to put something in there saying that he doesn't bear the risk, that would be a change order if it's more than X? So we really would have the risk thrown back on us?
So it's a multi-step process. First, during detailed design, we'll do a more Arrow Street and their subconsultants will do a more detailed soils analysis. That will get built into the scope of the project. So at that stage, that it will, any quantities, any information will get rolled into the specifications and the contract drawings. When we go forward with the GMP with the construction manager, they will build their assumptions based off of our current soils data from the detailed design phase. When we get to the construction phase, if we exceed those values that are in the GMP, that would be grounds for them to come to us with a change order. So it moves along with the process, and we would gain more information as we go through detailed design that would get built into the estimates, so that we could reassess this number as we go through those, those three estimates that I referenced before. So right now we're covering ourselves for an unknown, both through the detailed design phase and both through the construction phase. So this number will get dialed in as we go through that process.
So town meeting votes taking place, we've got a number approved, and Arrow Street does the work to determine better information on the soils, and it turns out that there really is a problem. And it looks like, so our contingency is what, $2.5 million? And let's say another, the 1,250,000 was right. So we've got to take $1 million right off the bat out of the contingency. Does that then mean we're gonna have to find $1 million quickly? Because we really cannot get up that contingency that fast.
So
upfront?
we would have to do, because at the end of this phase, we set our budget with the MSBA. We would have to do a VE exercise at that point. We would
Fine.
have to, because to go into construction, we want to carry our full contingency. So we would have to do that exercise. So that's the risk.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mark.
I'm more on the side of 500,000. If the number came in, if the number comes in at 400,000, and that's what he bills us, don't we get 100,000? Isn't that ours?
Jim,
Yes,
Mark.
you get the,
So if we're so if this was carried as an allowance by the CM, any monies that they don't use come back to us, as we talked about in all the CM at risk presentations. So yes.
And that's why I'm saying there's a risk here. Personally, do I think it's great? No, but there's a risk because we just don't know. I would rather see us at the 500 level, knowing that it's not going to it'll still be, it could potentially put a burden on the contingency, but not much. But if we're wrong, the money's still ours and we put it somewhere else.
Or we just return it.
That's right.
Go ahead, Becky, then Andrew.
While we're talking about contingency, I'm just curious. I think that we have a couple of items also that are adults. One of those being the playground, and just wondering how that factored into the contingency. Jim, I didn't know if you could elaborate on that, because we would really advocate for moving the playground forward. The existing playground will be about 30 years when this new building is finished. And so just wanted to have a conversation about that.
So if we were to roll in and add alternate, the construction contingency is 2.5% based off our construction costs. So that contingency would increase by that factor. So we would roll that into base scope. That would increase our overall construction costs, and then the construction contingency would proportionally increase by that much. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yep. What is the projection for the playground?
So the existing playground for the current ad alternate is $1,053,506. So just as we mentioned in the last meeting, we're carrying these as ad alternates. So those don't add to the construction total as of right now.
Okay. Andrew and Kathy, does it make sense to go to the other sheet, or do you want to stay on this with your comments before we kind of look at this in
Sure, so
bigger
let's-
picture?
I think for me, let's hash out whether the other items that could we use to lower the cost besides this, and then we can revisit probably the soils.
I would like to at least state that I am unaware of any discussion in this committee on the playground nor the sliding doors. I know we had a brief discussion on the art room. Now, I missed a meeting, maybe it was then, but I don't think this committee has voted to put those even in as at all. So I'm surprised to see them there given the cost. That's not a small cost to be added. But I just don't know where.
We have not discussed that. So I don't think that, I think that's something that needs to be discussed clearly. Okay, let's go to the bigger picture. I think we're between 250 and 500 on the soils based on where, just to put a pin in that for now.
Two other items that we had talked about that could move the needle here are whether or not we could get some eligibility for the STEM areas of learning commons. I don't know if we've heard anything back on that.
So we don't have an answer on that. That would have to be reviewed with the MSBA, so we don't have a definitive answer on that. Katie, did you take off the total square footage of that?
Sorry, to check out the total square footage of what specifically?
The the learning commons in the hallway, those breakout spaces.
So it's a little bit of a blend of two things. Let's see, the learning commons, as we have described in the space summary, we have 900 square foot per wing. So are you asking, sorry, Andrew, are you asking specifically about the STE area?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, estimated that it would be, I don't know, 1,000 square feet or, 900 or something like that. What if we moved basically 900 square feet into eligible versus ineligible, it's roughly $400,000 in additional.
Right. The issue with the STE is that there's not a full-time staff member. So that's what's been stated already in the ed plan. It would be a little bit of a reversal with them. So I think we couldn't necessarily promise that it would be able to be moved to eligible by saying it was the STE.
Okay, so I think we'll just exclude that one from now. And if it ends up happening, great. And then the other one was just if we want to try to adjust the grossing factor. Every 0.01, we change that, it's $750,000.
Yeah, as I said, I think on Monday, for us to do that means finding some space in the building that we currently have that we can eliminate. I think we've internally looked at trying to find some of those spaces. I'm not sure I can necessarily point to them tonight in a way that gives you confidence. But I do know that it's something that we're talking about and we'll try to pull out in the next round of review. So, once we set the program, now we draw the building, and as we take the building and say, okay, this is the spaces we need for the building, that's how you end up with that grossing factor. So it's not quite necessarily like, if we just turn it down, the whole building will shrink a smidge.
Yeah, and I'm kind of thinking like carrying it at 150 to me is a contingency. Because historically, and looking at the previous schools that have been done, they eventually kind of, at the beginning they do it 150, and then it comes down to 149, 148, 147. Some are even the 141s, right? But even conservatively, it goes to 149. I consider that almost a little bit of a contingency by keeping it at 150. Right, and and that's where I'm just gonna get like, okay, then so right now I have us at 7161. Right, just so close to that 69 target if we can get there. So, maybe we don't play with the grossing factor, but maybe we take one more thing off this list, or maybe we do the whole deleting or goose up the courtyard to finish that gap there or something, right? But we carry the full 150, knowing that we can play with that kind of extra contingency later.
So Andrew, is there something you or anyone else have that kind of show?
Yeah, I can show you my screen. My
Let
little,
me hang on, you may need access. Hang on.
and this is just my little cheat sheet on this guide, so bear with me.
I just think we need to all make sure we're talking about the
My
same.
bad formulas. Let me know if you see this. So in Jim,
All right, there we go.
okay, and then Jim, keep me. This was the latest price we had on the sheet you said we got today from Jason, right?
What-
7784.
Yeah, so that was $29,000 less than what we had on Monday, so I didn't know where it came from. But Jim, you'd said you had taken into account with that number our piece of the 950, but it was only 29,000, which is much less than our piece of 950. So I didn't understand how you got to that. So Andrew is next taking out our piece of the feasibility study, but maybe you think you've already got it in the 77,884, but I don't see how.
So yeah. It's what is currently in with the reconciled estimate, the town share is 77,884.
Okay.
When you back out the 550 for the feasibility study, you get 77,584.
I had 505 for the town share, if I'm correct, at the top of the 3011, where I just subtracted the 950 by the whatever is 400 something in the column on the right.
And we didn't understand that piece. It's not, did we get 39.84% or not of the 950 paid for by MSBA? Is that right or wrong?
So that is correct. Some of the other costs is non-reimbursable.
Of the 950?
Yes.
So
Okay,
Jim, is the town share the right number if we take what we got from MSBA share at the top of the 3011 and subtract it from the 950 to get us to 505? Does that seem right?
that's more than 40% though. How can it be right if not of it's reimbursable? So if we could just get the number that we're gonna be reimbursed 950, we know what to do here.
Yeah, and we'll know that number when we're fully billed out as to what the effective rate was for the feasibility study.
So can we put an estimate?
That's right. So
Yeah.
Jason, 505 is close enough. So leave it there. It's close
Yeah.
enough.
Anyway, so now we got, and just if people don't understand what this is, we've already bonded or already gotten the money for 950,000 for the feasibility, so we don't need to ask the town again. So we're just basically removing it from how much more we need to ask from now.
A point of clarification, what we have to vote on is the total project budget. How the MSBA tracks the total project budget includes the feasibility study.
We're going to be approving 110 million or whatever the number is at the bottom, but there on the side, when we bring this to town meeting, we could say, but the effective town cost is X, right? And what I'm trying to get to is an effective town cost of under 70 million.
We're trying to put in what the new permanent bond is going to be when this project is done. That's what Andrew's trying to get to here.
Yes, and I've done that exercise through the 3011s.
Yeah. Well, in the 3011, you don't carry like the rebates and some of that kind of stuff.
Correct, but then on my final spreadsheet, I did. If we can,
Okay.
if we want to
I
jump
saw
to
the
that,
final spreadsheet, yeah. So
if we want to jump to that so that we can walk through that.
yeah, I'm just gonna walk through mine. So I put in the full geothermal rebate. I know, Jim, you kept it at 4 to be conservative, but I'm just gonna put the whole thing in there. Here's the soil charge that we talked to. That's the $1.2 million discount there by putting the 250 back in the contingency. We had the acoustical panels for 360. We had the exterior wall EWA 5s for 398. We moved the bleachers to FF&E for 70, and then half of that 306 courtyard cost for a total of 7161.
Oh, so close.
So, but I have to, you don't have the soft cost factors that increase. Those aren't on top of those.
Good, that's gonna make it lower.
So this has to be put into the 3011.
Yeah, I'm just,
Yep.
this is the
I
back of
just,
the envelope cheat sheet to see if we're heading in the right direction, right?
So,
This is cutting 2.181, right? There should be a what, 10-15% markup on that at least?
so Mark, I see your hand. I'm coming to you. I promise.
That's fine.
So Jim, I hear your point. We need to put it in the 3011.
We will.
Andrew's point, and I think everyone has good points here, so I'm just trying to get us across the finish line. Andrew's point is that there are things that don't go in the 3011 that are very important to us as a town to make decisions on, the credits being a huge part of that, and how we present the feasibility study, right, to come to the total cost. So here's what I'm going to do. I think we all kind of know where this is trending. Mark, I'm going to let you speak. Then Jim's going to bring up his screen. We're going to make decisions on the 3011, and then we're going to all figure out which spreadsheet we're going to use for purposes of calculating the total town cost. Now, remind everyone, I know there are different optics here of some just trying to get it to 69 and understanding what it takes to get there. I remind everyone of the $14 fact that Kathy provided earlier. If we do end up at a number different than the 69.5 that has been thrown out. And hopefully we'll try to get to a number that we can all stand behind and understand any impact it had to the overall building, which I think we can all agree we have not taken anything out that there is contention on to date in this meeting. There may be, right, as we keep going. So, Mark, you go. Jim, get your spreadsheet ready.
All right, I may sound like I'm going back, but I threw up my hand when Andrew was speaking. I want to also opine that I want to see those learning commons at least request that to be reimbursable. One of the very reasons that got me excited about the learning commons, and along the way, I thought this would be an educational use of what is usually considered to be a common area. And I'm sitting there, what a great use of the hallway. There's only a piece of it that we really can't use. We've done something here. So I think, I'm not sure the case of trying to get this in the reimbursable is as difficult as it sounds. Had I not known this, and had I not made that assumption, I would have been pushing to make this building narrower and just squeeze the classrooms and put it in a STEM room in the back and have our 8-foot hallway. I think it looks great. My problem is that if we don't ask for the reimbursement, this kind of walks down a path of, oh, this doesn't look like a traditional school. This thing looks a little bit bigger somewhere where we shouldn't have it. And it kind of puts us into that, well, maybe we're overreaching on the educational side. Again, I don't think that's the issue here. I think this is marvelous and I like the concept. But I think we really strongly need to make to the state that we should be reimbursed for it because we're being so damn conscientious to make areas that are normally not educational. I too have a problem with the gross up factor, but it's because I've been in the commercial business all my life. And even though I've renovated 2 schools, the worst one I ever got to was 1.25. So, but I was renovating a school for medical use, not commercial use, not necessarily education. So I get the issue. I'd like to see it a little lower. But I am one that says we should ask for that reimbursement. If we don't get it, we haven't lost anything. But if we do get it, or we get questions coming back, we make the strong case to do it, because I think it's staring at us right in the face.
So it sounds like the request's already been made, it just hasn't been answered. And if the answer comes back to the detriment of us, we can strategize in a future meeting of how we continue to push
Yep.
that if we think that's valid. The good news, right, is no one is questioning taking the learning commons out. And I think I've heard nothing in any prior meetings that would dispute the committee's support for them. Okay. Andrew and Kathy, are you okay if I have Jim pull up the screen, or is there something you want to get in before we do that?
That's what I was gonna suggest.
Or,
I just pulled up the 3011, Jim, and typed that the 2.181 into the construction cost subtraction, and it got us to 69,992 if we add in the feasibility cost and the geothermal rebate. If that's correct, you keep me, yeah.
Yeah. So just so folks know, we need to get to a final value for what VE we're going to incorporate. So we still have the soils piece. I'm going to take a minute once we have that value, plug it into the 3011, and then get to that bottom line dollar value. The exercise that was that we did, that we distributed, and obviously this changed with the discussion tonight, was in assuming that we were going to take the full VE list with some other reductions. So those were the iterations that we did, more to show what the overall impact is. So I think if we can walk through, you know, the initial exercise, and then if we can have a discussion on the soils so that I can go back in, put what our VE value is going to be for what we're taking out from a dollar value perspective. And then we can have a discussion on what that dollar bottom line dollar value is.
So Andrew, what are you using in your calculation for
I'm
the
using
soil?
5 items. The first one is a minus 1.2 million to put soil at 250. A decrease the acoustic panels by 50% for 360,000. The exterior wall EA5 for 398,580. The move bleachers to FF&E for 70,200. And the lower the courtyard cost by 153,000, which totals 2.181780.
do it again. Totals what?
I'll just share my 2.181780.
And that's what so depending on where the soils goes, that's the tally that I have as well.
Okay, so
if you plug that in your 3011, Jim, right?
oh, hang on, just to make sure we're all on the same page. There are 5 items listed by Andrew. 4 out of the 5, I think were unanimous on, and I think we were holding on the soil. I would propose that we keep going with the number that Andrew showed, and then we come back to see where the committee's at, but I don't think we need to keep going back and forth between 250 and 5, which is, I think, the range that we were down to. Is that everyone okay with that? So I'm not saying we agree with the 250, just using it to keep this conversation moving.
Okay, so F3, both Andrew and Jim agree with, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And the committee agrees on 4 out of the 5 items in that number as of now, and potentially agrees on 5 out of the 5.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yep. So I could potentially, what I could do quickly right now is put the 250 in, that savings, and put the 500 savings in, because it seems like those are the 2 items that we're down to show what the delta is in the town share.
But
I would
yes,
just need-
if you change the construction cost number to the 87,099, right?
So you decrease the trade cost. These have markups in them, so
Correct.
you have to decrease the trade cost. You leave all the markups down below, so that's all tallied in and evening out. And then you can jump down. So I can do that fairly quickly to put this value in and then put the value if we take the 500,000. I
Yeah,
can
I
do
mean-
that.
I mean, the rest of the stuff calculates automatically, right? Once you change the construction cost.
Yeah, but you got to change everything on the right as far as what it's drawing down from your grant.
Okay.
So is that how we want to proceed?
I think if you could tell what the total town share is with that 2181 taken out of the construction cost would be great.
Okay.
Okay, now, mine is not to do with this, so I do need to go before we go into this again. I want to go back to the grossing factor. First of all, I agree with Mark, we should try really hard to move 900 feet of the commons of the four different ones of 3,600 over to reimbursable. We should really try and see what happens. I mean, all I can say is no. But to the grossing factor, this one I really don't get. Katie has said on multiple occasions, starting from the very get-go when we started talking about this, that she and Larry fully expect for that number to come in under 1.5. If you look at the last 10 buildings that the MSBA was involved in, it's well under 1.5, 1.41, 1.42, 1.43. The MSBA, their standard is 1.44. So I don't understand why at this point we can't take advantage, knowing that we're going to end up there anyway. At some point, it's going to be below 1.5. Why? I just don't get why we can't get to 1.49 or 1.48, which is still pretty darn conservative now, and take advantage of it as far as what goes in. So then when we go to town meeting, we can use some of it at least. And I understand you may have to change your schematic, but you're telling me you drew this to exactly 1.5? That's how it came out? I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. So can't you just revise it in a way without trying to find 2 feet on this bathroom and 2 feet on this bathroom? Isn't there a way to do this that's acceptable to the MSBA as far as taking out 2,000 feet or whatever it takes to get down to 1.48? And maybe I'm just naive. I just don't understand that piece of it.
So Larry or Katie, why don't you respond to that?
Yeah, I was gonna say, so we looked at, I think the number we were looking at, Katie, to get down there was about 3,000 square feet that we're pulling out of the building. And so the question for us is, to your point, is where does that happen?
But Larry,
Um,
1.49 is just 660 square feet.
Okay,
If I'm-
so we have been looking at it. I guess the issue I've got at the moment is without being able to run it through and make sure. I know Katie's been having some conversations to commit to that at this point. And I think, Andrew, you were suggesting keeping that as a contingency.
Yeah, and when we get Jim's number, we may not need it to get to the 69.9 effective town share number that I'd like to get to.
6.95.
So, you know, the way it works at this point in the process is we have to go in there and find 600, 1,000, 1,200, whatever the number we decide we think we want to get to. We've got to find that space and take it out of the building. And that's the part that's hard to commit to. You can talk about it as a number easily, but it's hard to say, okay, we're going to shift this door in by 2 feet and not run into some clearance requirements. We're going to change the bathroom layout. And all of that has to happen within the grossed up areas, because the net areas, the classrooms and the various other educational spaces are all defined by the MSBA. So you can't reduce those sizes. So what really you're saying is, well, we got to sneak down squeeze the corridor by 6 inches somewhere. And
Larry,
we've got
your
to,
plans are that detailed?
we can show them to you, but yeah.
I'm gonna stop talking about it. There's something I fundamentally don't understand, because if in the end you're gonna be there, I just don't see why you can't get there now, at least a piece of it. And he's right, it's not 3,000 square feet, it's 600 or so, and we know it's not coming out of classrooms. We're not asking that. We're asking out of the stuff that the gross up factor is meant to cover.
Okay, so the,
But he's
Larry,
right.
what would it take to properly answer the question, especially given we seem to have a very fundamental difference in terms of 3,000 versus 600.
I mean, the math is pretty easy, right? You take
Hold
nine,
on, let Larry answer.
So again, every time we go into the plans and we say, okay, we're going to trim here and trim there and trim here and trim there, and that we can try and accomplish that. I'm just cautious about saying, well, let's just pick a number that we feel 600, 1,000, wherever the comfort level is. We have to go in and find that 600 square feet. And I don't have a spot for it yet. I have some ideas about it. And so I'm cautious about saying, yeah, we can commit to that because it isn't a multiplier. It's squeezing the building plans at this point in the job.
You agree with the 600?
No, he didn't.
that 1% equals 600, you mean, Jason?
I mean,
I just want to understand what amount of square feet we are talking about. I understand where Andrew and Kathy are at.
If
Do my own math.
if you say to me, we have to squeeze the building by 600 square feet, I'll say, okay, let me go find out what I can do about that.
But do you agree the math that they have presented, is that right or wrong in terms of just, is the
Oh,
600 the right number? I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
I'll trust Andrew with the numbers.
I mean, it's what, 99.
I haven't done the math, so, but I would trust Andrew's numbers and
Right,
say, okay,
divided
it's
by
600 square feet.
1.5 multiplied by 1.49. Right? I'm assuming that's.
We have a net area that we are calculating. Katie, you can probably do it the other way as well.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I think the 3,000 came from that 1.46 had been thrown out, and that is a much more drastic cut. So
Okay.
we're talking, yeah, we're sort of going back and forth over if you're talking about a cut, how drastic a cut are you describing? I think that's what we're trying to get our heads around.
So
3,000 would be difficult.
To get us to the number, we could even do 1.495, which would round to 1.5. Right?
So all right. So we got to keep this discussion moving.
Yeah.
So
So Jim, what do you have for a number? If I think that's the next part.
Yeah, so I'll show my screen here. Okay. So with the minus 2.1 million, we get to a town share less feasibility, and I'm using your 505 now just to keep it square.
Okay.
74,832,377. For the incentives, again, this is where we can, have a discussion. We're assuming 4 million to give ourselves a little bit of a buffer for any variance for that gets us to 70,832,000.
If we add in the forecasted number, we get there, which I don't know if we need. I mean, again, this isn't something that you guys pay, right? This comes from the government. We know we're at risk. I assume that, it seems like the team that put the 5 million number together knew what they were talking about way more than any of us did. Then we paid a lot of money to have the number developed that go with the 5035697. And that gets us to a final bond of what, 69796, and call it a day.
So, yeah, so I mean, the only piece to that, and Kate, jump in if I say anything wrong. This is when the system is in place and operating. So that is quite a few years down the line. So that's the caution that we want to, that's why we want to show the 4 million. It's not, they don't just cut a check when you say the product's going forward. So just want to make sure that's clear.
Kathy, you going to talk about the credits? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I advocate also to put the number in there that's computed based on the current estimated cost, because if that's what the law says today, let's put it in. We're trying to get to the screen we're going to show at town meeting that's going to say, this is how we get to this is what we think the final bond number is at the end of the day. And that number can be put up there because that's law today. As far as it being 4 million versus 5, if the law says 34%, we know what math says. So if it's going to be a different number, it's because the cost is different. And if the cost is different, if it comes down, then great, we're going to save more than we're going to lose on the credit. So I think it's fine putting the actual number in there based on law today, based on the estimated cost today. I'm perfectly comfortable with that. And I really like that final bond number.
So while I like the result, I know a thing or two about this, so I'm gonna ask a few very tactical questions to inform my decision. Of the 5 million, how much is Mass Save and how much is federal government?
The mass save amount is 1.268.
Is that amount at risk at all?
The mass save number, no, that has been funded.
Okay. So we have an amount, that amount is, we feel very comfortable with. So the remaining roughly 4 million is the amount that is potentially in question based on what the government continues to do with these credits, right? In that 4 million, have we made aggressive assumptions in terms of the documentation that is going to be required around these, specifically around prevailing wage and some of the other kickers and bonuses that are part of the IRA package?
So we have not added any additional soft cost markup for the construction side. So I think that's the question you're asking.
No,
Is that what you're asking, like the paperwork to track it or actual labor cost?
no, I realize there's a administrative component that is a cost, right? So, just for everyone's benefit, we are going to have to hire someone at some cost, and it's not going to be $10,000 to document these credits and maintain the documentation from the contractors throughout the project to actually be able to get these credits as long as the federal government doesn't rescind them in any way, shape, or form. So I think we cannot take the full amount at face value. Now, do I think it's millions? Absolutely not. The other thing I will say is there is a chance, even if these credits stay exactly as is, no congressional action whatsoever, there is risk, just like any sort of grant or anything like that, that you are ineligible for certain things. That could be something as simple as our contractor doesn't submit the right paperwork to us, and some of the cost just doesn't get reimbursed. So, while I agree in principle of just using the number that ties to the report, I think it is risky to assume we are going to get every dollar to the penny here because these things are not perfect. The law is evolving. And even if these credits remain, we have a huge documentation risk, much like we had on some of the ARPA funds we had in town and stuff like that. There's just some administrative cost and burdens that we just need to be eyes wide open to. So again, I like the number, but I think we're just going a little too aggressive here.
Jason, my understanding, the risk is that just that we told town meeting a number that was the best we had at the time. We're still approving the full amount of the bonds. So even if we get no of that $5 million, we still have the money to spend. Right? This is what we're anticipating the final bond will be. We're still approving the full, whatever, $107 million. So the work's going to get done. The geothermal is going to be in there. Yes or yes. It's just at the end of the day, at the final bond, we're anticipating it's going to be 69 million because of what we've seen and what we've been told and in everything that we believe. Earnestly, we don't know. We don't have a magic ball that tells us it's going to come out to be exact that number, but it's the best information we have. But it's always, we're going to get the work done regardless.
I agree. I just think the optics are not clean. And and knowing that one or more of us are going to be up there presenting it, I think we need to haircut it something. I'm not necessarily even advocating $1 million, but I'm trying to understand from Kate, which I don't know is fair to ask her, is which kickers are in this? Because the kickers are where the risk is on these IRA credits. It's not the base credits. It's the,
So
what did
we
they assume
didn't,
for prevailing wage and all that?
so we did not take any of the bonuses, if that's what you're referring to.
That's
So there's
exactly what I'm.
potential bonus that you could get for domestic content. We did not assume that.
Okay,
So we did not assume that you would get all of that. Or we didn't assume any of that in here. You might end up qualifying that. That totally depends on exactly where your product comes the day it gets bought for the project. So we didn't account for that.
okay. So let me translate that for the committee and you tell me if you agree. There's a chance that this 5 million could be greater based on the way that they've done the estimate. A
So this
chance.
is the conservative number.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. So there are kickers. We may or may not qualify. My concern was that the 5 million included some of the kickers.
So you feel,
Right.
Jason, with the 5, with the 34%?
Yeah. Look, if you weren't trying to get to a number, I would tell you to go down to 4.5 to deal with the administrative requirement, but I can live with this knowing that we can deal with the administrative within a contingency. But we will have some costs here that we have not budgeted. Roger?
So, Jason, I hear your concern about the fact that something, we might not get the whole thing. So is a different strategy to use, to identify the number with the kickers in it, but then only take the smaller percentage as a, I don't know, call it a holdback or whatever it is. So still use the 5 million or not?
I'm okay if we haven't assumed any kickers. As long as Kate can assure us that there's no prevailing wage or domestic content in these numbers, I'm pretty good.
So the prevailing wage is not a kicker, it's a requirement. If we trigger over 1 million kilowatts, which translates into a tonnage for ground source. That
You have assumed that.
it's not triggered right now with the size of the project. But we would continue to say that the project and the specifications should include that tracking in case something changes. But that isn't giving you any additional percentage for doing that. That's just a requirement of how the subcontractors track their labor.
So, and if they, just for everyone's benefit, if we go over that threshold and we don't track it the right way, then it puts part of the credit at risk.
Right. So we're just assuming that you're triggering that and we would have a specification that tracks that through
Yeah,
construction.
The
And
legal
they-
documentation would require them to do that, because that's my understanding where most of the
Right.
issues are now.
So on other projects, Jason, that will be built into their CM agreement, into the specifications, into the GMP for all that tracking. So that they're bound by multiple contract documents. That's how we've done it on other projects.
Okay. I'm going to be quiet on this topic for now. I am not objecting to the 5. My question then still remains on the soils before we get to the playground and the sliding doors, which I think is a warranted discussion next, is how do we feel about the project contingency if we only carry the 250 for the soils? And that's a question for both Skanska and Arrow Street.
So because of what we know and what we don't know, I think 500 is the prudent number to carry. As we discuss this, I can, as I said before, I can put that in to see what that does to the bottom line value. But with the data that we currently have and what we don't know, I think 500 would be a better buffer for us if there was anything found in the follow-on phases. So that's my stance.
Arrow Street, anything you want to add? I'm more concerned about the total, not necessarily just the soils.
Jim, you're at 2.5 for sort of normal construction contingencies, right?
Correct.
And then we'd be adding, and 2.5 is how many? How much actual dollars?
So it's just over 2 million.
2 million, so you'd be adding, in the
So-
case of 250, you're adding 10% to that, and in the case of
So
500,
no,
you're adding.
to Larry, to clarify, no, we're carrying this within the construction costs. We had one iteration that we were carrying it outside of the construction cost and dropping it down, but that was when we we're carrying 750. We can certainly look at what it would do to carry 500 in the construction contingency. I could do that fairly quickly to understand where we would be with that number as well.
And so what we're talking about there is that in the event we're finding materials and we're having to haul them off to a more expensive premium landfill, the amount of money we would spend would be reduced incrementally because the markups from the general contractor and things would be pulled out of that 500 rather than added to that 500.
Yeah, but to be clear, those markups, if it's a change order, the CM will be adding those. They
right.
will be adding markups to their change orders if they're hauling it off. So that's somewhat the risk of moving it to construction contingency. You're not accounting for that for that markup.
Jim, what's the markup versus what we would be carrying for a regular markup on the soft costs?
So for the cost within the construction line, it's about 20% for GMP contingency, insurance bond, all of that. So if we drop it down to construction contingency, you could expect somewhat similar on a change order.
I'm just thinking basically it would be a wash.
Yeah, depending on where you carry it, you're just not carrying that risk if you move it down to construction contingency.
Yeah, I want to keep it at 250. But hear what everybody else has to say. Or we change the grossing factor and lower the square footage. One or the other.
Okay. I think we have exhausted the soil discussion, but I think there are two other important items that, does everyone agree the only other discussions we have to have are finalizing grossing factor, finalizing soil, and discussing now the playground and the sliding door concept? Is there any other topics that I'm missing?
Well, the second art room too is in that group. We never voted on it.
So we'd be voting to carry that as an adult, essentially.
No.
Okay. So who on Arrow Street or Skanska wants to explain why we have not talked about the playground or the door concept?
I can talk about both of them, probably.
Okay.
I'll start with the door. I can also show an image. This is a photograph of what we're trying to describe in concept. This is from the Westwood School. It was something that we saw on some of the tours. Sorry, I'm trying to adjust my screen there. We saw on some of the tours, and it seemed of interest to the floor plan and how the classrooms can interact with the learning commons. So basically, this is a storefront door that is on a slider. It would slide into a pocket, and effectively is like moving a portion of the wall out and extending between the learning commons and the classrooms. The point that we were at in what we were showing in the classrooms, it was sort of two separate concepts, and we couldn't necessarily draw them both into our plans. So we wanted to see what these doors would cost. The point of putting in there as an ad alternate was really to get a price for them so that we could understand what they would cost if it was something that we wanted to entertain. That's sort of the explanation of why it's in there and why it's an alternate, because it was sort of playing out two different concepts. The playground aspect came essentially from when we were discussing the soils and we redrew the line of the scope of the project and pulled it in. And it effectively was next to the road and not including the playground. So, for right or wrong, that's sort of the genesis of the playground being separate from that. Similarly, we wanted to understand what the cost of that would be. What would it cost in order to do that? When we were looking at redoing the septic line with the civil engineer, I made sure that they drew it under the road so that the playground could remain in place. This is also cost-saving measure. You don't necessarily have to replace the playground if the scope of work was within that, was excluding that. The contractor could work separately from that. So
Okay.
it's a bit of
As
the
we heard
background.
from Becky earlier, it's a 30-year-old playground. I don't think you build a brand new school and just ignore the playground that is used every day. Just my 2 cents. Greg and team, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. One, what is your view, and are you advocating for even discussion of the doors here?
Greg, you want me to,
Yes.
oh, you gonna go ahead.
No, you can take this, Stephanie.
Um, I think um, our feeling is that if we had the doors as opposed to windows, that what, Mark was talking about the learning commons earlier and sort of that really educational opportunity there, and that we would be able to better capitalize on that being part of the learning space. So that would be a reason that we would advocate for this. We saw it when we visited the Westwood schools, the new school in Westwood.
Okay. Second question. Were you aware of any discussions around the playground ever being outside the scope?
No. In fact, right or wrong, we assumed that that was going to be included in the scope of the budget and the project. Not as an adult, I think not having the playground be part of this overall project would be a significant oversight. I don't know what, I think the $1 million for a playground, I don't know what the range of the scope of a playground is. But I think a new playground is essential for the projects. I do not consider an adult.
Who can speak to how you came to $1 million and what's included? And I'd say in answering that question, are you building a playground for the community, or are you building a playground that just meets the needs of a grades 2 through 5 school?
So the estimate came from our landscape architects who work directly with playground installers. So this is based on their experience, and it is based on the 4 grades, a 4-grade school of the grades that we have. There are different types of equipment for different ages of kids. So it was taken into account the number of students and the age that they are. So.
Well, but and don't forget, it's not just playground equipment, it's preparation of the area, regrading of the area, providing the base that you put in, which is a rubber floor mat essentially, and then the equipment itself. So let's not, imagine that it's $1 million worth of
No, but I mean,
what we see sticking out of the ground.
no, but I also would say that we installed, 8 tennis courts, 2 pickleball courts, and a basketball court at Algonquin, and that was $600,000, and that was a significant project. So I just think the overall cost of that playground, I'm no expert, seems like it could be revisited.
We could certainly do that. I wouldn't argue that part.
And no one has consulted with the district, though, to show them exactly what you're scoping either, right?
It's a broad estimate. It's purely based on the number of students and what they would recommend for that. So that's absolutely true. It could be right-sized. Each piece of equipment costs something different. As Larry was saying, it also includes the grading of that underneath it, but also the rubber surface. So some of the projects you're thinking of may not have had the same surface on it. It might be grass or something else. So this is that um, rubberized with fall protection, fall zones. All of that is part of this scope. But it's true. It could be right-sized. It could be more or less. It's purely a broad number based on the size of the school.
I'm going to echo what Greg said. I'm not an expert in this area either. However, I'm aware of a community that has a much higher cost to get to in the Commonwealth that would be subject to prevailing wage that built a whole park for this amount, including the rubberized surface, all the concussion uh, protocol items, all those things. So I'm going to ask the committee two things. Is there anyone that thinks that this should be an adult?
No from me.
All right. I'm not hearing anyone saying it should be an adult. Now, the second thing is, so we need to carry a cost for it. That's the goal.
Wait, okay, I didn't understand your question. I don't think it should be in there at all at this point. I think there are things that the school system SOS can do to raise this money separately. We've done things like that before, but no, I'm not advocating adding anything to the cost of the project.
Okay.
I would say I think you could keep it as an adult, and when we get into VE and we get into having a lower grossing factor, et cetera, that could help pay for this. Or we can look at CPC funds or SOS funds if that comes to that point. But
Yeah. So let me finish my thought.
all right, go ahead.
So everyone agrees the school needs a new playground as part of this project, correct?
Correct.
I think doing this as part of the base bid is actually the wrong answer. So I'm pretty much agreeing with you, Kathy and Andrew, but we've got to carry something. We can't, in how we want to do this, I think you're right. I think we can discuss. It sounds like we've exceeded our site allowance already, so we're not going to get any extra kickers from the MSBA. We can do fundraising. We can do, right, like, but we can't do the fundraising, right? So you're going to need someone that actually, whether it's SOS or someone else, to be involved. But I also think you could probably bid this separately with a separate playground provider that would not be under the oversight of the CM here, and hopefully achieve something we can be proud of and not something we just stuck out of the ground just to check a box that we had a playground, but obviously take some care and thought into what the number is. But I would say it's dangerous to carry nothing. I know you're trying to get to a number. Andrew, I'd rather change your grossing factor and carry something for the playground than do that. And here's why. We're talking about potentially a $14 cost if we carried their number. We all agree. No one's saying it's $1 million, right? So let's cut it in half to 500. I don't know if that's the right number or not, but you run the risk of losing potential support for this project over something pretty small. I think, I don't, we've gotten FAQs on, is there going to be a new playground? So let's not, be penny wise and pound foolish on this. I will work tirelessly, Kathy, to within the bounds of what we can do to seek alternative fundings, whether it's CPA like Andrew suggested, whether it's SOS. But I think we need to be eyes wide open to the cost. I will also caution that the capital plan carries a playground for each of the schools as well, in collaboration with both the schools and Neary. So what I would be looking for if we're going to pull it out of this budget is that we maintain an item on the capital plan for an amount, in agree that we are going to bring that forward to a town meeting, not maybe in March, or sorry, May, But at some future point, if we have not been able to secure the right path to having this ready when the school opens.
I would go along with that plan, so that we be able to provide assurance to town meeting on May 10th that there is going to be a new playground. I think it would save a lot of money to do it that way, get all the, markups, out of it. So I advocate, and I don't want to trade the grossing factor for this, because that grossing factor is going to come down no matter what we do tonight anyway. It's coming down. So I would advocate for doing what Jason said, being creative about this, putting in the town capital plan, bringing it forward, and then make, like we did the fire truck a few years ago. Let's see if we can't raise some money to go with it, pay for a piece of it. That's what we did for the Fay playground also. CPC, absolutely. So I'd be in favor of putting this on the town side, right? Which is what Jason's saying. But have a plan for it so that we can honestly say, yes, there is going to be a new playground.
I agree, and I think it makes sense, right? You're not paying as much of a markup. We can get Travis and the team involved, and make sure we have good, coordination between that and the schools. I'd even be on board with having it as a capital article at town meeting with this, and put the $900,000 into an article and sit there for 2 or 3 years earning interest, if people were worried that we weren't going to approve it.
Well, you're not going to earn interest on it per se, right? Because Brian's just not going to bond it until he's got to pay it, right?
Right.
Well, yeah, but we'd approve it. Yeah, we have an article sitting there ready to go, basically what we're trying to
I
say.
don't want to commit to that till we really get through the budget process this year, given we know how awful that looks right now. So I'm willing to truly do whatever we got to do to basically assure town meeting that we are going to have a new playground. It's just not going to be part of the general contractor's purview.
Okay. I'm going to ask 2 questions. Greg and the school administration, any objections to that path forward?
No, I think our position is we need a playground. How we get it, it's not really up to us. So yes, I can support that.
Okay. Arrow Street, Skanska, is there any concerns from your perspective, especially with the CM, of like having this scope and potentially having this kind of creep in and be adjacent to your site, especially when you're almost ready to open the school, hopefully? Like, because that's when the timing of this work would be done, right?
I mean, I see it akin to if you've done any projects with, PV, solar, that they come in at the end and do that. So as long as that's clearly defined, the limit of work is clearly defined, they'll have their own builder's risk, whoever is doing that work. As long as we know upfront and are able to structure the contracts and the contract drawings in such a manner, I don't see a concern. It'll be something to be coordinated. Within the CM contract, we would likely reference it as something that they need to coordinate with, so that they own, any type of coordination between the 2 projects, as just to cover all. So yeah, I don't see a concern if it's known up front. We can contractually protect the district.
Okay. So I think we're back to sliding doors and soil then. Is that correct? And potentially grossing factor? So sliding doors, what was the cost of those?
200 and something, right?
100 something.
That cost was for 10, just keep that in mind. So
207,000.
So
Katie,
I'm
how
looking at
many
the school
would we need?
administration. Sorry, go ahead, Greg. Sorry.
Katie, so that's an estimate for 10. How many sliding doors would we need? So that would be 16.
there are 28 classrooms minus, but you probably wouldn't want one in TLP and Castle. Again, this is why we just put in a certain quantity there. It could be designed so that they're not necessarily at every classroom. Could be every other classroom, or again, this is why we put it in to get an idea what a certain quantity of them would cost, but we haven't played out how many of them you would need.
My suggestion would be if you want to leave it as an adult and play with it in the VE when we get to the design phase, but I would rather not add it now.
Wouldn't we eliminate $30,000 by eliminating that window?
Be an offset.
Yeah,
Would be an offset. Yes, you would do one or the other. You don't have enough real estate there, enough wall space to have the borrowed light and the sliding door.
so I
So,
reduced the price to 170.
yes.
So just a comment about the sliding doors. We do obviously appreciate that it's an increased cost, but it fundamentally does change the space. It changes the classroom to the learning common, as Stephanie had shared. It makes the learning common, I think, more useful. I think it makes learning flow from the classroom to the learning common. There's more connections from classrooms to classrooms. So it is a significant impact to the overall feeling of a common area.
I'm fine with it being an adult, given the amount. I think you should be relatively confident that in the end, there would be a place to fund it.
Okay. So that leaves us back at soil. We carry the 250 and not the 5. You stay below 70, right? If you make it 5, you just hit 70, if I remember the math correctly. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
I would propose we add another 100,000, so 350.
What is that, 69, 8 or 9?
You add. But then you have the markup on top of it, right, Jim?
Yeah, so depending on where we want to, I can run the numbers real quick. It'd take me 2 minutes to run the 350. It's gonna be, yeah, we're at, with the 5 million incentives, we're at,
69796, right?
yep.
So even if we say it's one, so we're adding what, extra $100,000, right? So
100 to contingency.
6896. So if you add 100, that's 120, right? So 6896.
yeah, roughly 69 and change.
I think it's 6896, right? If you add 120, 100 for that, and then the markup, 120, and that's 6896.
So sorry, Jason, you're saying add 100 to the soils contingency within the construction line or the construction contingency? I just want to make sure I'm clear.
I'm suggesting, and I certainly welcome feedback, that the construction contingency related to soil should be $350,000.
Right
Okay.
now, the soil contingencies in site improvements, not in contingency, right? So you're saying take it
We're confusing this. We shouldn't call it contingency.
250 out of soil improvements and make it 350 in construction contingency.
When we started the day, we had 1.5 in construction for soil, correct?
1250, when you add the markups, you get 15, right? But
1250 in site improvements, which then means 1.5 at the end of the total impact, right?
So
Jim,
yeah. To put it simply, right now, we're showing with all the VE taking the 250, we have 2,181,780 that we're taking out. All we're doing is adding 100,000 back in, essentially. So let me run those numbers and just see where we land.
But that will get us closer to Mark's number. So I go for the 100 because it's still going to keep us below.
Yeah.
You see where I'm not budgeting from. It's going to have 6. So I think it's 69896 is what we're gonna, or excuse me, yeah, 69896.
Denise, did
In
you have
it,
something?
would you say, Andrew?
I said Denise had her hand up.
Yeah, I just want to say something before I go to Denise. I understand why we're trying to get below 70. I get it. But I really don't think, again, I don't really think 69-70 versus 71 is going to be a deciding vote. Again, I could be horribly wrong on this, but I get why we're doing it, and I'm comfortable with the changes we've made. I just continue to be reminded of the experience I had in 2017, where I stood up on town meeting and argued over $2 million, and instead just worked our tails off to return that at the end and gave ourselves the cushion. I just remind everyone of that.
Dollars, this is $70 million. If it were 20, I wouldn't be doing this either, but
No,
it's.
no, but we're talking about potentially $1-2 million swings here. In terms of yay, nay, people are either for or against when we get to that. It's just at least what I've heard. Either they're dead against spending a single dollar on this project, or they were in favor of the number we had previously. We've done amazing work here, and we should be proud of where we're at. I would just remind the committee, again, I'm very comfortable with where we're at tonight. I'm not going to lose any sleep over where we're at. And I think there's a lot of people that should be applauded for their work on this, in particular, our school administration for being so amenable to changes. I don't think our consultants are used to working with school administrators that actually are willing to work towards a project, but I think they see the end game, as opposed to just sticking to this is what we asked for and it has to be that. So I just wanted to remind people of kind of where we were in August, where we are tonight, and just pause and reflect on that as part of my commentary. So with that, Denise, I'll let you go.
So I have two major concerns. As I stated the other night, I'm really concerned about not having a soil contingency that's going to cover what we need. I think the worst thing this committee can do is go back to the town and say, oh, we need more money. I don't want to see that happen. And the incentives, my question about the incentives, when will, I guess this is to our team, when will we know that those incentives are actually solidified and coming back to the town? And the reason I ask that is because if we're saying the potential and we're subtracting that potential and going into town meeting saying, okay, there's, 5 million, 5 million that we're going to get back. And then what happens if we don't? That's a concern of mine by putting that in there and saying.
Yeah, so if we get nothing back, right? So that $5 million number we just talked about, and even though we heard that at least 1 million of it is already quote unquote coming our way once we complete the project, we're on the hook for 5 million extra. It would be approved. There's no subsequent town meeting vote that needs to be done. But what it would mean is if we don't get those amounts, the average taxpayer would pay 5 times 14. They would pay an incremental amount beyond whatever number we project on the screen. Kathy, do you agree with that?
So Denise, we're approving the full bond up front, so we don't have to go back if we don't get the credits to ask for more money. We're just trying to show the town what we think in the end, based on what we know now, what the law is today, what we do believe once the bond is permanently placed, what the cost to them as far as taxes is going to be. So there's no going back as far as the geothermal credits.
And on
Okay,
those
well, I
credits,
still am worried about the 500.
You said you're still worried about the 5? Sorry, finish
Well,
your
yeah,
thought.
and yes, I agree. I still wanted an answer on the credits. When will we know?
I think
Probably
we
at
should,
the completion of the project.
once that building's open.
What's the money hits our account?
Yeah. I mean, there's just, I go back to my comments when we were talking about it and my concerns. There is a lot of documentation to just substantiate the credits. So even if they are unwound in some way, shape, or form, who knows what sort of grandfathering may or may not be involved. But yeah, you should not expect to see that money back in our account until 2028, but Brian will have to pay for it before 2028 as that system gets constructed.
And then, as I said, I'm more in favor of $500,000. And I have to agree with Jason. I don't think $14, even if it's times two, $28,000, I don't think that's going to make or break this project. But there are things that the town does want to see, and they do want to see a playground. Hopefully, the methodology, we get there, we get a playground. We can't put up a new school and leave the old playground sitting there. That would just be a tragedy.
And we agree. I had a meeting this week with a large amount of seniors, probably the biggest audience we've had since we started this by far, multiple of it. So a lot of what I'm saying tonight was informed by that meeting. And so therefore, that's where I'm coming from is what got said at that meeting.
Okay. Is there anything
And
else? Go ahead,
Oh,
Jim.
sorry. So I did run the numbers. If we bump it up to 350, we're at 69,936,593.
So a thumbs up from Mark.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
Okay.
Jim, what do you have for town share costs, just so I can put it in my spreadsheet?
So the town share cost is 74,972, or sorry, 74,972,490.
Thank you.
And that's with feasibility study backed out.
Perfect.
Well, if you take off 5.1, you don't get what you just said, but whatever.
It's 69,936.
So when you take off the 5,000,001 from that,
5,035,000. Yeah,
Alright.
I can put it up on the screen just so it's
both did it. I'm fine.
clear. Okay. Yeah, so
So-
we have the
Okay.
and then the incentives back to.
So using this number, what is the average cost per household if that's where the project came out? Based on the latest data, did you run different interest rates? What's, I know we've talked a lot about the infamous $14 per million now, but what is the number?
Where is Brian's here? Is Brian still here?
He's here. He's still on
Brian?
mute though.
You want me to do it or you want to do it? You haven't said much tonight and I have said way too much.
He's off mute.
No, I'm off mute, but I don't know, to be honest.
Well, we can do this real quick. So Jason, he ran 3 scenarios with interest rates, what we think interest rates are, then plus 75 basis points if they go up. 75
Yep.
So I'm focused right now on telling you what the middle road was. So let's go back over this. Okay. Before we just made those changes, and I can do this, I think, on the fly. Andrew, once the bond is fully in place in fiscal year 30, the cost to the average house, which again is about, let's see when we get there, it's going to be $1,150,000. So the cost to a house that is valued at $1,150,000 in Southborough would be another $1,094. We've just taken off, Andrew, help me, 8 million almost exactly, right?
It was 77.9 before, right?
Okay, so 8 times 14, I believe is 112. So if I take off $112 there, I'm down to $982, $81.
And say that valuation you used again for
Okay,
the
so-
house valuation?
So fiscal year 2030, Jason. So Brian's rolling forward, right? So right now we're at 957,500.
Okay.
Okay. Now 5 years forward, he's got the average house value at being 1,150,000. Okay. Based on that house value, based on what we did tonight, the increase for 1 year to that house is going to be $981.
Under 1,000, which is a nice story.
I'm more concerned with that number than 69 versus 70, going back to my prior comments, to be completely honest.
To each his own.
Okay. It would be good to get a final number because I imagine once we take our formal votes, So don't do it tonight, right? But like take your time over the next week. I do envision that the communication subcommittee is going to want to do some sort of press release update to make sure that the public is using the latest numbers, especially given, I used my accounting term, a very material shift that we've seen in a positive manner.
And Jason, can I just say that the base year of FY 26 is still in flux. So and it's to the good, actually. So, stand by for that. It's not accurate as of tonight. So I just
Okay.
want to let people know that.
So,
Go down, not up, right?
Right.
so Jim, you need motions. I feel like we can't accomplish both though tonight, based on where we're at. So,
So the more important motion would be to set the budget, because we have to send the SD notification into the MSBA, which includes those. If we have to hold off on the submittal, our plan is to submit on the 25th. So if we were to have, now the only thing that we're up against, which we have been on previous ones, is that we just need those certified minutes to go in with the submittal, so we'll have to time that out. But the one that takes precedence would be the budget, so that we can get that into the MSBA. That's behind us, and we can try to plan out when we would vote the actual submittal.
all right, so pull your screen back up.
Yep.
Jim,
So
11 budget, basically that file.
correct. So, and just so everybody knows, the budget that we have to submit, the numbers that we've been talking about, it has been backing out feasibility study. And I forget if I said this at the beginning of the meeting. What we submit to the MSBA, they see the total project budget as feasibility study plus construction. So that's an all-in number that they need to see on what we vote. So I just want to make sure that everybody's clear there. So I will share my screen to the summary of the 3011. So that would be for the total project budget. Oh, sorry. Of $108,517,025.
Finance subcommittee, you comfortable with that number?
I know no reason not to be, but I mean, I'm staring at the same spreadsheet you are.
Okay.
So it looks, based on what we did tonight, it looks like it's certainly, right without truly, detail reviewing it.
Okay, so what my suggestion would be is I'm going to put a motion on the table for this amount. I would encourage whatever due diligence needs to happen to just audit the spreadsheet to occur when practical, given everyone's other commitments in life. If there's an error, I need to know sooner rather than later so that I can post a meeting and re-vote it, and allow Jim to meet the deadlines or update the MSBA that there was a clerical error or something like that. And then we'll need to have a separate meeting, albeit hopefully a short one, to approve the meeting minutes and to take a second vote, which would be around the actual report that Katie owes us and the drawings that I will send around that I have. That make sense? Okay, so I'm gonna move that the Margaret A. Neary Elementary School Building Committee has completed its review of the schematic design for a total project budget of $108,517,025 and approves submission to the MSBA for its consideration.
I'll second it.
There any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Roger?
Yes.
Andrew?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Denise?
Aye.
And I am I as well. So that is a 6-0 vote. Okay. Anything else on the Skanska Arrow Street update?
Nothing from us.
All right. My next agenda item is community outreach, community feedback and outreach plan. Mark, you had asked for this on Monday, so the floor is yours.
I'll be as brief as I can. One of the things that is missing in the outreach is the ability to set up a no vote as not something that's acceptable. And I don't think we're stressing the case that kicking the can down the road of any of the issues we're facing at Neary School is in the interest of the town. And if we need to discuss things that we have hesitated to discuss, we need to get those on the table and discuss them. Several weeks ago, there was a meeting with, and I'm not being critical, there was a meeting with a group of parents with kids that are young. And they're the kids that will be going to the new Neary. And after that meeting, I was contacted and had a direct and indirect discussion with them about the project. And I gave them some of the information of the existing building. And the immediate comments I got, had I known that, I would support this thing and I would be calling my neighbors. But I didn't know that. So I was on the website today. I asked my question of, why do we need to do this? Why can't we just renovate this school? There's nothing there. In no spots do we say the school is presently unsprinklered. In no spots do we talk about some of the materials in that school. In no spot do we talk about the fact that it is not handicapped accessible. And I'm sorry, we've kicked this can for 40 years. Every school in this town is handicapped accessible. And then all of a sudden they come to Neary School and we have to make some pretty significant accommodations to get them through the school. And I'm sorry, it is a public safety issue. And we need to get that out on the table. No one should feel comfortable going to town meeting and voting no. We have to take that off the table. And we have to take the idea, well, we could just piecemeal this. We could just put the roof on. We could just fix the handicapped accessibility. I think we need to have a discussion so that people realize you can't do it. And if anyone here thinks that we can renovate that school, we could put a sprinkler system with the kids in that school, you're not thinking properly. We would have to move the kids out for 2 years to do all the renovations that are needed to that school. So the costs are even higher than the 65 million that we were given months ago. We need to start talking about that. People need to realize how important this vote is. We have done our darndest to get the cost down where we have the educational needs met. We can fit the 4 grades in. The school will be safe. The school will be healthy. We are adding a system that's going to bring outside air and constantly circulate things in this school. We need to start stressing all the important things that make this one of the safest schools in our system. But we have to tell people it isn't. There are some security flaws in there. We need to talk about that. People need to realize it, and I'm not embarrassed to say it. We
Mark,
need to talk about, we
Mark,
need to
Mark,
talk about,
Mark, we don't talk about security of any school in open session.
I understand that, but that information needs to somehow get out into the marketplace. So I'm just suggesting we need to foment a way to get this information out there. No one who is not going to support this project should feel comfortable voting no. It's not an alternative. We said these things 25 years ago with Algonquin, and we got more people to go to town meeting than ever before. And they were there for all sorts of reasons, including the ones who wanted to say no to Algonquin, but yes to a high school. That was a totally different issue. But for some reason, a lot of people are not realizing the shortfalls of what we have there. And I think we need to talk about them. So that's my message back.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think once we get beyond this next week or two of finalizing this documentation, our entire meeting substance is going to be about communication. I would remind everyone that because we are appointed or elected officials, we have rules we have to abide by. But I think we all acknowledge we can continue to get information out there differently and better. And I would also say that my biggest disappointment thus far on this project has been through some of the public outreach. No matter which avenue we try to get people to show up, the easiest way for anyone to see or observe or make their own opinion, which is important, is to actually show up at the building itself. And when we opened that building twice, the attendance was abysmal. Again, I welcome any and all strategies. This is a standing agenda item for how to educate anyone about any of the topics that you mentioned, Mark. So, while we do have a communication subcommittee, I think that part of that committee is really just coming forward as part of the broader discussions going forward. So appreciate your comments. Kathy, you have anything on communication?
Yeah, Jim, the spreadsheet that I saw, Laura, I think I saw today where you've updated the B1, C1, C4, and then just base repair. You know what I'm talking about? That spreadsheet?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The fine. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, that spreadsheet, we need to get that everybody, I don't know who you sent it to, make sure everybody has that, and that should definitely be part of the communications, Jason, I think. As it shows again, I mean, the costs are really squeezed now. You would believe how close the cost of the new 4th grade is to the base repair. It really does, I think, paint a really good picture for us as far as why the new 4th grade school is the better option of the 4. The other thing I was going to say too is there's 2 threads going with the senior population. And I listened really close this week to them. One is, and they're actually very interested in this. They really ask great questions. One of them did bring up, but isn't this going to cost us a whole lot more if we wait? And I said, absolutely. So brought it up. But there still is a group that is very concerned about the site and still thinks that Finn, an expanded Finn, is the better way to go. So I would like the communication something to put together a memo that we can all have. So we really got it all laid out as far as why we believe that an expanded Finn is not a better option than the 4th grade new school at Neary. So those were the 2 threads. Cost for sure, absolute cost, and then Finn over Neary.
Well, and that the same feedback that we got at the last open office hours that I mentioned on Monday, which seems like a year ago at this point. So yeah, thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Mark. Anything else on that?
Just quickly, Mark, as Kathy knows, it's hard to get on the calendar at the senior center. It takes a while because they put it into their newsletter. I'm on the calendar for the 24th of March. Didn't have a lot of choice in that. Hopefully you'll be able to join. You had mentioned that before. Because I think this, again, the site issue will come up.
I can be there.
I'll email you on it also, 1 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay. Is there any public comment? All right, now for the trickier item, meeting schedule. So we need to have one more meeting in the next like 10-ish days, right, Jim? So I'm looking at you and Arrow Street to say when can you get us the documents? My intention would be to do a very quick morning meeting to do a final vote on those. So when do you think you can get us the documents? I have no ability to post a meeting at this point until Wednesday at the earliest, given the holiday on Monday.
So I guess I would defer to Katie for. So we have the drawings in that link that went out. So it would just be the compiled, updated with the comments for the narrative.
I could send
Those are
that tomorrow.
And those are the only two pieces, correct?
The budget is the third. So
The
yes,
bu-
the narrative, the drawings, the narrative, I can have an updated, including the comments tomorrow. The drawings you have, it'll just be if there's any comments on that, depending on what they are and the turnaround time.
So I'm going to suggest either next Thursday morning or the following Monday morning. Any preference or availability?
Okay, both are fine with me.
All right, exactly which date?
The
Next Thursday.
20th or the 24th?
What time on the 24th, or just the day in general?
Open, yeah, I'm open to suggestions. My thought is it's gotta and probably should be morning to give the team time to then do what they have to do, because we then have to get we're gonna approve minutes. They then need to get posted with the town clerk, certified, and then back. So there is just some stuff that happens once we actually do our thing.
So 8:30, 9, whenever.
Okay. Is anyone opposed to next Thursday morning?
Nope,
All right, I'm gonna schedule
I'm not.
8:30 next Thursday morning. And Katie, obviously get me the documents as soon as possible so that folks can do a final pass. Also suggest people have edits. Just provide a listing of those edits so Katie can compile them. We will circulate them with the meeting documentation to make sure we comply with any sort of open meeting law. So again, you don't have to necessarily wait until that discussion. Just reply to my email only. Okay. I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'm gonna second that.
Roll call vote. Andrew?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Denise?
Aye.
Roger?
Aye,
And I am I as well. Have a good night, everyone.
Oh.
thank
I know.
you.
Right.